Alright, so you push a new build out there for your users, but they don't see any new changes. They keep complaining saying that the button is still there or the fix that was supposed to go out, it's not yet there. And that is when you use the magical words, just hard refresh. Now, why does this even happen? And how do we fix it so that users always see the latest version without Command Shift R? Let me explain. So when you build your app, you get an index.html plus your JavaScript and CSS bundles like main.js, style.css, etc. The browser fetches them and then it caches them locally so the next page load is faster. Now the problem is that if the file name doesn't change, the browser assumes that the file hasn't changed either. So if you deploy a new main.js but it still has the same name, the browser may serve the old one from the cache. So the solution for this would be to cache burst file names. Instead of main.js, you get main.abc123.js, something like that, not exactly abc123, a hash that is random generated from the contents in the file. So basically if the code changes, the hash will also change and the file name will now be different. Since the file name is new, the browser has no choice, it must fetch the new file. But where does the browser learn about this new file name? From the index.html file. That's why index.html must never be cached. If it is cached, the browser will happily read the old HTML that still points to the old JavaScript bundle. Now, by default, browsers can cache any files unless you tell them not to, and servers often set headers like the one that you see on the screen, which basically means keep this file for 24 hours. If that happens to index.html, users won't see new builds for 24 hours. So that's why we force index.html to always be refetched. There are other header combinations as well, as you see on the screen. The first one, which has no cache as the value, basically means to check with the server if it is still valid before using the cached copy. The second one, which is like a nuclear option with a lot of backward compatible headers as well. This one means don't keep this file at all. So this nuclear combination of headers is what you should usually go for in case of index.html because you don't want to cache it at any point. But for other hashed bundles, you should keep it cached forever. Now, unfortunately though, the problem is still not solved. Even if you cache burst your bundles, there are chances they still get cached. One of the biggest culprits is a service worker. A service worker is like a middleman between your app and the network. It checks if there's a resource already stored with it, and if that's the case, it will serve it without going to the server. But the downside is that if your service worker isn't updated correctly, users will still see old stale files. That's why apps normally show you banners saying new version available. Do you want to refresh? You'll always have a call to action button in that banner itself. So it is essentially a graceful way of handling this cache bundle issue. CDNs also cause similar problems. Any edge server out there might be serving stale content, even if you updated the origin or the main server. Until the CDN cache expires or is manually cleared, users still see the old version. That's why you normally invalidate the CDN cache after each deployment so that there's no stale data being served to you. Now there are different ways to handle updates cleanly, one of which is the update notification pattern that I just mentioned a while ago. Instead of forcing a refresh, your app can check for new versions in the background. They compare the current build version against the server's version. If the versions are different, they show a banner saying new version available, click to refresh. You can also achieve this with the help of a version check endpoint. This is a super simple API that your server exposes. Your frontend is essentially going to ping it every few minutes. If the version changes, you know a new build is live. Then you can prompt the user to refresh. So to summarize, bundles are cached by default, which is why we need hashed file names. Index.html should never be cached because that's the actual map to the latest bundles. If you cache index.html files, you'll see the same bundle for as long as the index.html file is cached. Service workers, CDNs, and even sloppy builds can still serve stale files. The fix would be to manage cache rules, invalidate CDN cache, and use update notifications for a smooth user experience. So caching is not really a bug, it is obviously a performance feature. The trick is to balance speed and freshness. So the next time your users say that they can't see the update, you'll know exactly what to check and you won't have to say just hard refresh.